What's up, everybody? Welcome into the latest episode of the Blitz Network Radio. You can hear the bird chirping there in the early evening. We have returned for yet another iteration right as the Bears wrap up their first week of minicamp and final phase of off-season activities before training camp. We're going to talk about some of the first impressions about how they're in the best shape of their lives, how everybody is night and day from last year, totally new stories that have never been touched on before, and to get into a little bit of the rankings of the top 100 list that the Bears have been releasing in celebration of their 100th season, and then eventually bitch about TV because that's what we do best here at TBN. To help break all this down, you know him well. I like to think of him as my favorite nerd. You probably think of him in a more positive light. I think of him in a positive light too, but just in a different way. He is, and I'll say this: he is a future NFL GM. If you have been living under a rock, this is my formal congratulations to him over the air. Anyway, for taking his first steps in doing that, he's with the Vikings. He is a TRADER trader, Brad Spielberger. Brad, what's up, buddy?
How's it going, man? I hope to be a TRADER trader in the NFL, but right now I'm just a TRAITOR. So yeah, up in Minnesota, having a good time so far. First-class organization, but of course still a diehard Bears fan. So you won't hear me, waxing poetic about the Vikings. But thank you for the congratulations, and it's a very exciting and cool time.
Wow, why do you hate the Bears, Brad? You clearly hate them so much.
Hate them.
Oh God, dude! Like I just sensed nothing but hostility there in your voice.
Yeah,
so
that's Chicago team.
Oh God. Let's jump right into it. I'm not sure how tapped in you've been as the Bears have come back, but to be fair, this time of year you don't really need to be following the storylines so much because the storylines and the developments that the Bears are making and the developments that really all 32 teams are making, it's the same. It's the same this time of year, this late in May, every single season. Everybody's in the best shape of their lives. Everybody's picking up the scheme better than ever. Everybody is clicking. Everybody's winning the Super Bowl, Brad.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So my favorite storyline that we get every year, another one that you're familiar with, I'm sure, is the classic diamond in the rough, kind of that.
Oh.
And so there's two different iterations. There's the UDFA, new player diamond in the rough, and there's also the guy who kind of stuck on a roster or two last year, or maybe came into camp with one team and got cut, and that was all the motivation he needed. And boy, does he look good in our camp. And he is about to be a major contributor.
Brad?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. So I'm trying to think of who that's been for the Bears, and I'm getting Tanner Gentry vibes. I'm getting Daniel Braverman vibes. I'm getting well, really, those are the first two names that primarily come up recently, and I know there's a common thread there. Anybody that can connect the dots will understand that about falling in love with two less than gifted white receivers. Why everybody wants to get behind that? I'll let the final bridging there happen for everybody else. But as far as how much should we buy into this storyline for the Bears, you have comments like, I mean, I don't know. I just saying off the top of my head, Bilal Nichols praising Mitch Trubisky as if a nose tackle would a second-year nose tackle. And I'm just saying, like, let's just look at this objectively. A second-year nose tackle knows everything there is to know about being a great quarterback and seeing the difference in a great quarterback. Allen Robinson saying that everybody's on like their P's and Q's more than they've ever been. How much stock are we putting this into with this specific iteration of the Bears?
Sure. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say the next guy in the line is Matthew Betts, who also has some similar traits to Gentry and Braverman. But anyways, I do think that it depends on what you want to take away from comments like that. So I saw something from Ha Clinton Dix as well, and I think that it speaks less to how great is Trubisky looking on the field. I do think you can buy in a little bit that it shows these guys really like him as a leader, as a person. Um, I think there's some clear buy-in across the entire team into Mitch Trubisky the person. And as much as I think that it can get overblown and stories can be kind of ridiculous that you need to be this great leader to have a good successful team. No, if you're super talented, it'll play itself out. But I do think that quarterback in football is an example where getting everyone in line and having everyone buy in can make a bit of a difference. So I think that's the takeaway for me.
Yeah, for me, I can never take so much away from football in shorts. Some of the best teams in the league aren't like they're building their foundations here in the springtime, but they're not like, oh man, we're clicking, we're not dropping any passes in May. That means we're on our way to a championship in the fall. Like they're not doing that. The Patriots, for example, they don't concern themselves with the opinions of the offseason. Like they do their work. They move on to July, and they don't really, I feel like, start actively caring or start putting so much pressure on themselves until November and December, or less, or like when it's like a pivotal divisional game or something. So, it's all about perspective. For where the Bears are specifically, I'm not the biggest buy-in believer of Mitch Trubisky. I'm not going to necessarily say he's special because of, so I'm not necessarily going to say he's special because of practices and shorts, but this is exactly what you want to be hearing from him and his weapons and Robinson and everybody glowing. You want to be hearing glowing practice reports. This wasn't necessarily something you heard last year, for example, in the first year of Matt Nagy's offense. So
I
this is an
agree with you
expected
there.
step. This is an expected step, is what
I,
I'm getting at.
Yeah, definitely. I think again, it's nothing to do with actual, results of plays and practice in shorts. I put zero stock into, but as you mentioned as well, them saying they're way ahead of schedule in terms of understanding the playbook and all of that, I believe that as well. I think that they installed maybe the most complicated offense in the NFL with entirely new weaponry across the entire board, and now Robinson coming off the torn ACL, so now you have a lot of healthy guys coming in to their second year in an offense. So from that perspective, I think it's fair to have a positive outlook on that. But yeah, no, I could care less about his accuracy, on 15-yard out routes in shorts.
As far as the defense, obviously this was the league's statistical best unit last year. Most metrics, they led in takeaways, they led in yardage, they had the top DVOA. They had the most, I guess, highlight performances, if you will. But they're here. These are their first real full team practices with a new defensive coordinator, with Chuck Pagano, with guys like Roquan Smith probably taking more of the mic snaps, being the lead backer. Uh, what should people be taking away from minicamp, from defense, which in my mind is probably even more difficult to ascertain or to judge properly from practices and shorts, defensive play, that is.
I think I certainly agree with you. It's probably much harder to really draw a conclusion from how a defense looks going up against an offense that, as we know, as Nagy likes to say, they're just testing things out and trying things out. He wants Mitchell throwing interceptions and pushing the ball. So you shouldn't get too excited about, oh, this guy had interceptions in practice. Who cares? I think again, it's comfortability with Pagano's system. You want to hear a lot of buy-in as well in that regard. As much as Fangio, I think you and I agree he was a good coach, maybe a touch overrated at the end there in terms of his X's and O's and dropping Khalil Mack in coverage for God knows why. I love the comment from Pagano today. I don't know if you saw it, but basically saying if Khalil Mack rushes 1,000 times and never drops in coverage a single snap, I'll be happy. I love that. That was not a direct quote, but something to that effect. I was very pleased with that. So what I noticed a lot with Fangio was guys would say, I'm trusting that he's putting me in a position to succeed. He can tell what my skill set is and what that brings to the table. And he's kind of putting me in a position to use that to my best of my ability. And that sounds Belichickian to me, where a lot of teams like to just force a guy into doing what they want him to do. And good coaches take the best skill set that the guy has and find that role. They cater that around him. So I want to hear a lot of that about Pagano.
Yeah, to your point on Mac, it was refreshing to hear him speak of Roquan. I mean, speak highly well of Roquan Smith. I mean, Vic Fangio did this too, but the way Pagano seemingly has revered Roquan in the past few days, where the Bears have been again in just shorts and just helmets, like you don't really hear that about linebackers this time of year. You don't really, for as meaningless as these practices are, you're not typically gonna hear a coach being like, "Oh man, this guy is special. This guy is transcendent." When his first practices, when they're non-contact, when they're not really that, like that tells you about the level of trust, I guess, that you're gonna see in a lot of his players. That to me, just based off of these early impressions, and I'm not putting too much stock into it. It'll be a relatively seamless transition if it's going to keep going like this.
Without a doubt. And I think with a middle linebacker, I'm guessing he's really speaking to, is he calling out all the right plays? Does he know exactly where he's supposed to be? Is he directing guys around him? We've heard a lot about how Danny Trevathan was the leader of this defense, and not saying that's a bad thing, but I think we would agree we would like to see Roquan Smith be the guy directing traffic and leading this defense. So that's hopefully what he's referring to.
Back to Khalil Mack, Brad, like, what is it like to be in an environment, and I hope this is a conversation you can have on the record, an environment where Khalil Mack is your favorite player, and you're technically in, I'm doing air quotes, enemy territory.
Yes. So as I mentioned, this can be on the record. As I mentioned, there was a new hire questionnaire that was circulated around the office, and it was already known where I was from, which is the Chicago area. So one of the questions was, "Who's your favorite player in the NFL?" I'm not even sure if Khalil Mack was a true answer. I just kind of thought it would be funny to put the newly acquired stud for the Bears that terrorized the Vikings last year. And yeah, I heard a couple. Yeah, when that trade went down last year, it was bad news for the rest of the NFC North, which was fun to hear. It's kind of an obvious thing. I think we know that was the case, but it was pretty funny to hear, from the inside.
You don't sound like a TRADER, Brad, and like that's disappointing. Like I was hoping you would do a heel turn. I was hoping the script would have called for you becoming the villain, like late in the game. I was hoping that
Skull Vikings.
Skull Vikings.
Wow. Mack, or as I refer to him as, a poor man's Daniil Hunter.
That's just blasphemous. Like that's not even like that doesn't even make sense. Like who would say that? Oh man. Daniil Hunter getting shut down by like Bobby Massey, and you're gonna say he's better. Oh man. Okay, I can't even dignify that. I can't even.
I thought you wanted me to become the villain. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. No, but all jokes aside, definitely a cool organization that it's not, as we mentioned, it's not any sort of beef or anything like that. It's a lot of fun. It's a healthy rivalry and a lot of fun. It's funny to joke around for sure.
Have they let you be around practice, or has it mostly been legal stuff? I know we talked about this in the pre-show, Brad, just getting your impression, but have they, like, I'm not asking for like inside information, but I'm just gauging to be, oh, hey, is there the similar air of, hey, everybody's in the best shape of their life, like best shape of their lives?
So this is not a non-answer, I promise. Absolutely no one is allowed around practice.
You guys specifically, okay.
No, so not a single person in the building that is not a coach or a scout or directly related to football activities. Well, I guess, I'm sure the CEO, if he wanted to walk down there, could do it. But they have tight security around practice. Not a single person. We met with the head of security to tell us all the rules. No, if I wanted to go down there, if I tried to sneak down there, they would escort me out.
Hmm.
Which I thought was pretty awesome. I mean, these teams in 2019, in the digital age, they are not messing around. I of course would never do something like that. Try to sneak a video and text it to Ryan Pace, who I don't know. But they don't take any risks whatsoever with any of that. It is separation of church and state between the business and the football side, without a doubt, which I think is pretty cool. I'm guessing most teams are like that, honestly.
Do you even get like a window?
Oh, we have a window which faces an outdoor field, which they don't use. But but yeah, no, great office space, beautiful, brand new facility. It's less than a year old. But yeah, I mean, you can, I've seen some of the big wigs. I've seen the guys involved with football around. I seen Kubiak in the cafeteria. I saw Dalvin Cook at breakfast this morning, but not interacting with them. Not, it's not my job is not to be interacting with the football side, so that is not my prerogative.
I gotcha. Well, to be clear, are you in the best shape of your life? Do you understand whatever offense or defense you're learning better than ever?
I am for sure in the best shape of my life. I have never felt better. This is going to be the best year of my career. And I am picking up the playbook like you dream about.
Wait, how is wait, how does the shape relate to the best year of your career? Like, wait, what sport are you playing?
Flag football. It's tomorrow at 5:30.
Oh, okay, okay. Are you the franchise player?
I was immediately picked for tight end. I walked in the office, and for those listeners who don't know, I'm a nimble 6'7" with hands that you cannot teach. You're either born with them or you're not.
That
And I was pegged to be a tight end before my foot even crossed the threshold.
that sounds like they have you playing center, where you're snapping the ball to the quarterback and you're trying to save face.
Absolutely not. It's a no snap for me.
All right, let's move over. You can follow Brad on Twitter at BradOTC. You can follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski, and follow us on Twitter at the Blitznet. Let's move over, Brad, to the top 100 list. Because if there's one thing you want to do to fill an off season, it's meaningless rankings. It's power rankings of the oldest franchise in the NFL. People, this gets conversations going. These are all completely subjective opinions, and these are all totally meaningful. I mean meaningless. I mean meaningful. The top 100 has been revealed. The obvious names, the Bears have revealed this, as I said at the top of the show, a kind of a celebration of their official 100th season in the NFL. You have some of the obvious names at the top, like Walter Payton, Dick Butkus, Gale Sayers, what have you. Bronco Nagurski, one of the old school names you have there. I'm not sure what the exact criteria is there, and I'm not necessarily going to argue the merits of the entire list. Because that would take forever, and this could turn into a heated debate where somehow you're bringing in Daniil Hunter and Khalil Mack, because that's what you do, Brad. So just some minor contention points or some major contention points that you might have, my good friend, just perusing the list, questions about it overall.
So my main contention is more a general point than a specific, although I do have a couple specifics. You can't compare in eras, and so as you mentioned, this is just obvious and known. I don't want to call it clickbait. I mean, it's not clickbait. It's just an article that is intended to scrounge up conversation and have people arguing and talking about it, which obviously has been successful, as many people have talked about. But it's impossible to compare guys from 1930 to now. It's impossible to compare guys from 2010 to now. So people are going to get in a tiff about all that, but it's not really worth it. On a specific level, Brian Urlacher not being in the top 10 is blasphemous. Also, you can just tell throughout the list, they basically got to a certain guy at a position and then just felt like they needed to slide in the next guy at that position in a different era. Like, the whole thing is completely subjective. For example, example, Alshon Jeffrey is number 80, and then Brandon Marshall's number 81. I almost love that one because maybe they were just really trying to piss off Brandon Marshall by putting him just one below Alshon Jeffrey.
Brandon Marshall was a better player than Alshon Jeffrey. That's
100%.
not even a
100%.
debate.
Not even close. So stuff like that, yeah, it's just kind of silly. I love the guy to death. I think he's gonna be a firm plant on this list, but Eddie Jackson already being on the list is kind of silly. I mean, he's 96, like he just got on there, but he basically had a great season and I don't know what 6 stellar games at the end of his last year. So, and then my favorite is probably Patrick Manley making number 100. He's obviously a favorite of the writers. He's always been a very well liked Bear and person, which is again awesome. But it just shows the subjectivity that you have a long snapper on your top 100 in the history of the founding franchise of the NFL list. So, the gripes are almost just me laughing.
Yeah, so I'm a giant hypocrite because I'm gonna pick this whole thing apart. I mean, everyone that's listened to me has ever read me knows that, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna lean into that brand. Brian Urlacher not being even in the top 10 is a travesty. Brian Urlacher, I know there's Dick Butkus is a legendary player, but in my mind, and I will die on this hill, and I don't care if he even sounds like recency bias. Brian Urlacher is the best linebacker the Bears have ever had. Brian Urlacher is the embodiment of he does everything better than every other linebacker they've ever had. I know that you made the point about comparing eras. Okay, well, Butkus was a special athlete for the '60s, and I'm sure even if I'm gonna make the illogical leap of logic to where if Butkus had the access to nutrition that Urlacher had of the early 2000s, he still wouldn't have been as good of a player as Urlacher. He still wouldn't have had it. Like Urlacher was special. Urlacher literally changed the game. Butkus, I feel as if almost gets a reputation and an earned one of intimidation and of punishing everybody more than being the actual best player. If we're just talking about pure skill set, if we're talking about a guy who had a defense literally designed around his abilities, it's Urlacher far and away, and that's a travesty to me too. Devin Hester, the greatest returner of all time. I mean, you're putting guys like Jay Hilgenberg above him. You're putting guys like Steve McMichael. Everyone ahead of him is generally a franchise legend, but Devin Hester is the greatest returner of all time. Devin Hester is someone that, while maybe wasn't overall as great of an entire football player as someone like Urlacher, the someone he played alongside in the same vein, like you're never going to see a player like that again, and no one ever saw a player like that before he came around. He shifted special teams. He basically, with how special teams is now slowly dying away, he was the last wave of an era and the greatest wave of an era. And like I don't know, for me, seeing guys like Richard Dent, a little bit of a stat pattern there towards the end of his career after not playing with the Bears. You know, Mike Singletary, more of a 2-down linebacker than a 3-down linebacker. Like I would absolutely put Devin Hester above them. Steve McMichael, like, why this feels like a very biased '80s list. If the more that I look at it, Dan Hampton too. But and I'll advocate for that. I think he was the best player on that '80s defense.
Yep.
Dan Hampton should be in the top 5. I don't think he ever got the fair credence or approval overall. Someone like Olin Kreutz, come on. Like Lance Briggs, as much as I don't think he's a Hall of Fame linebacker, Lance Briggs was a better linebacker than Olin Kreutz was a center. Charles Tillman is the Bears' best cornerback in history, and you're going to put Gary Fensick and you're going to put Kreutz above him. You're going to put Steve McMichael over Charles Tillman. Like Charles Tillman, has forced 44 turnovers. Charles Tillman, like, okay, I'm getting a little heated, so I'm gonna slow down. I'm gonna slow down.
Steer into it. Steer into the skid.
Steer into the skid. George Halas at 37, the guy who founded the franchise, the guy who owned the team for 50 years, 70 years, the guy who's the only reason the NFL exists. He's 37. He literally played for them. You can put. How is he not in the top 5? How is he not What is this? Khalil Mack at 60, and I'm gonna skip the opposite way because I know people are upset because hey, he's only played one season. No, he's the best. When it's all said and done, he's already one of the best defensive players the Bears have ever had. I would have put him even higher. He's the only reason he's the main reason the modern Bears are relevant. You steer that man higher. Jim McMahon at 53, or like such love for the punky quarterback. Oh my God, he showed his ass to Pete Rozelle at a practice. He's so funny. He was only, but really he was only an okay quarterback. I don't know. I'm just okay. I'm gonna steer this back. Brad, thoughts?
No, we were all looking for that. We were waiting. I knew I could see the wheels turning more and more. You were like Daenerys Targaryen, getting ahead of myself.
I saw
more enraged.
I saw the red keep, and that I saw it as the symbol of all of my Bears coverage, and that's when I knew I knew what I had to do. In the words of David Benioff and Dan Weiss, that's when I knew I had to do what I had to do.
Yep. And so, as you mentioned, I think you could probably guess exactly what age these writers, the twilight of their careers and their lives were based on which guys are higher. The 80s love was going to happen. But as you mentioned, Tillman at 31 is preposterous.
He's the best defensive, not even the best cornerback. He's the best defensive back they've ever had. How is he 31?
Agreed. And I also, as you mentioned with Hester too, so they kind of pick and choose when to place an increased value on kind of Bears impact, I guess I would put it. Devin Hester was literally the offense for a Super Bowl team. And his return in the opening kickoff of the 06 Super Bowl, it's like a top 5 Bears moment in the history of the franchise. Or maybe that's recency bias out of me, but stuff like that, they picked and choose when that mattered a ton and when it didn't. And then, as I mentioned, you pointed out Khalil Mack at 60. So like I said before, they had Julius Peppers at 59, and we're like, oh, here's a great pass rusher. Who's next? The next great pass rusher. It's just very kind of subjective and silly. And I also love Robbie Gould. Now that I'm looking at that area, Robbie Gould at 62, got to get the kicker on there in the top 75 of the history of the founding franchise of the National Football League.
Yeah, you had to put a kicker in there. You for whatever reason for a team that's played over 1,400 games, Robbie Gould had to be 62. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Bill Wade, Matt Suey. Bill Wade's at a very nice number at 69, but really, he's the 69th best player in franchise history. Matt Suey, because he blocked for Walter Payton. Like, the fullback is dead, ladies and gentlemen. Like, running backs maybe still kind of matter. I'm not gonna do the full troll, but fullbacks definitely do not matter. Like, and I guess we're still leaning that. We're still holding on to that hope. The only place fullbacks matter, Brad, is in Madden, when you can do the easy fullback dive on 4th and 1 to get the first down that the computer never knows how to stop. That's 100%. The only place fullbacks still matter.
Or if your name is Kyle Juszczyk in San Francisco. Otherwise, don't matter.
Okay, well, Kyle Juszczyk has and I'm not trying to be an asshole about this. Kyle Juszczyk has 10 concussions, so I'm honestly surprised. That the fullback is still a thing there, but that's a testament to him, not a testament to football culture. Different topic. Willie Gault. Some of these names, admittedly, and this maybe will date me. I've never heard of these, especially towards the end, and I'm gonna nitpick. So. People that were mad, like you kind of mentioned Eddie Jackson at the top, I'd put Eddie Jackson at 96. He's on pace to be their best safety ever.
Yeah.
That's that. I don't think that's that contentious. Patrick Manley's the bad one because that's just you're putting it as a joke. But again, this list probably shouldn't be taken that seriously. I'm trying to cool down here. I'm trying to cool down. Be cool. Back to Kreutz, and I want to hammer this home. Was Olin Kreutz even one of the 5 best players on the 2006 Bears, the best team of his career?
So I'll be completely honest. I just remember Olin Kreutz having a 99 rating in Madden for 6 years in a row. So anything you say, and he's also fun on Twitter and is engaging with fans and posts some cool O-line breakdowns.
Don't you?
Olin Kreutz, I think he should be higher on the list.
Oh, okay.
And he rocked a mean Hawaiian at the draft, so I'm thinking he's kind of 27's a little low for my guy Olin.
Answer the question, Brad, and don't bring your bias in. Is Olin
No,
Cruz?
he was not. No, he was not.
Okay, thank you. Bringing in your orange Kool-Aid here, reminiscing to the nostalgia of your childhood.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's for was he who?
I guess the offensive line really. Was there any was he as a center the most notable name on that offensive line? Am I forgetting someone?
I mean, I think he was the most notable name, but and that offensive line was good, but it wasn't like they were the. It wasn't like they were the Great Wall of Dallas or anything. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it wasn't like they were a cohesive machine like anything like the Colts had of those days. Like they were fine. They opened holes for Thomas Jones and Cedric Benson, but like I don't know. For me, like to put Cruz up at 27 and to be ahead of guys like my main contention is like he wasn't a better center than like I said earlier than Lance Briggs was a linebacker. Cruz wasn't a better center than Charles Tillman was a cornerback.
Yeah,
Like
Tillman should be way high on this list. That one's confusing too because, as I mentioned, I assume a lot of media darlings and just very well liked guys. Charles Tillman has to be one of the most liked people.
He's probably the favorite Bear from that era. Like people think of him
probably, yeah.
Yeah. Another
he's saving the world as an FBI agent. I mean, the guy just you can't find a cooler human being than Charles Tillman.
Yeah. And then one last point, Wilbur Marshall, I feel like as one of the more underrated careers. I wasn't aware of this until recently, and it really wasn't inspired by a top 100 list. I was just like looking up like some of the names from there. Wilbur Marshall had a pretty decently accomplished career. If anything, I feel like he should be higher as well. That was a guy that probably is someone just as a comparison. Leonard Floyd would maybe one day model himself off of, even if it's not in Chicago. So that's just something else to think about. I don't know. I'm not particularly heated about anything else. Everything else eventually you got to start square it. You got to start putting in square pegs and round holes at some point. So, but those are my main things. Like have some respect for Peanut Tillman's name. 80s Raiders.
I'm with you. You mentioned George Halas. I'm not really sure how he's not
37.
Yeah.
37 for the founder
Crazy.
Of the franchise.
Like, you think Virginia just spit at this list when she saw that? Like,
well, I think Virginia wanted herself ranked at some point too. Like, oh, I never put on pads, but I own the team now. I should have been in the top 10. Maybe I'm overstepping, but
yeah, I've learned a bunch of cool tidbits about Halas. It's funny how George Halas seemed to help the Packers. As I mentioned, there's a lot of collaborative efforts. So everyone knows the story of him suggesting Vince Lombardi to the Packers. He also was very instrumental in helping the Vikings get off the ground back when they were the Duluth something or others. So he really just propped up Midwest football and helped the league survive through several, as you mentioned, potentially league-shattering and crushing endeavors, and deserves credit. And he was also, as I learned, a New York Yankees baseball player, so he needs to be way higher on the list for just being an awesome.
I guess the main point, the main contention, like the contrast to that argument for Halas is that if this is a top 100 list of players, his resume off the field, his front office like resume and coaching is far more notable than his playing career. While he was a decent player, you know what I mean? Like it's that argument can be made, but even so, like it's different when it's the guy that literally found your franchise. Like if it was like right now, like an owner like George McCaskey, like okay, who cares? Like he shouldn't be nowhere near the 100 like as an owner. But like Halas was like you just kind of laid out, like he did everything, and it was even outside of the Bears too. So put some respect on his name, 80s Raiders.
Put some respect on the man's name. Although I just found, well, I'll stop talking about this. He played for less than a month for the Yankees, and he had 2 hits and a .091 batting average. So more of a football guy. Definitely more of a football guy.
Wow, sounds like Deion Sanders moonlighting for the Braves. Exactly the same thing. Exactly.
much.
All right. We can wrap up this football talk, and this is where we will put in a giant spoiler alert, because Brad and I are going to talk a little bit about the endings of Game of Thrones and probably the endings of some other shows that maybe you haven't watched and might eventually binge watch in our age of mindless content consumption. So if this is where you want to pop out, feel free to follow us on Twitter at the Blitznet. Follow the future Jets general manager, Dolphins general manager. I think that's where I placed Brad at Brad OTC as he starts up his Vikings career. And follow me on Twitter at Robert Siklinski. If you want to continue on, like I said, spoiler alert. Brad, what did you think of the ending of Game of Thrones?
So, if anyone saw my tweets, I was not pleased. I've done a good bit of defending of this last season. I've definitely bashed a lot of things that have happened. I've also done a good bit of defending. And even the fifth episode, the penultimate episode, I think I was more okay with Daenerys's descent into full-blown rage than really most people I interacted with. I think that if you take the season in the context that everything else happened, her going dark wasn't as rushed as many other things. They had to force the issue. They had to. Well, they didn't have to, but they chose to, I suppose. And so I had no problem with her just exploding the city and all of that. So going into the last episode, I thought everything up until John killing her was great. There was kind of what we expected to happen, but in different ways than you expected, which I think Thrones does a good job of. We knew Danny or John, one of them was dying. So, him doing it the way he did it was cool. Every single thing from that point on was F minus terrible. Uh, First of all, apparently Drogon understands symbolism. And
Yeah, apparently he's the smartest dragon alive, and I'm just imagining him giving like this powerful monologue as he burns the Iron Throne, like to literal molten ash or like just molten lava. Like he's just so observant.
yeah, someone in a friend of mine said maybe the angle they were going for, which would have been a classic D&D post-episode comment, was he actually just saw the dagger in Danny and then saw this chair with a bunch of daggers sticking out of it and thought he was attacking that which had killed his mother, which honestly makes for what the dumb things they've done would almost make a little bit of sense. Obviously, that's not what happened. So I didn't. I mean, actually, I liked that. I thought it was cool, but I also just think it was. I don't know. And then he picks her up and just takes off. And yeah, so from that point on, just terrible. So first of all, the skip ahead in time. I guess they just didn't know how to handle things whatsoever. So they went with the classic laziest thing in television and cinema, which is just skipping ahead in time to avoid having to neatly tie things together. So, you think Grey Worm, who just committed mass genocide, is going to just imprison John and not kill him for killing Danny? Like, okay. Uh, then they let the co-defendant in a capital murder charge, and by that I mean Tyrion, select who the next king is going to be. And
Bran the Broken, is that supposed to be an endearing name in Game of Thrones? Given how messed up that universe is, I guess so. Bran the Broken, like, okay, dude, like you're crippled as hell. Like we're just gonna remind you of that every moment we call you we call you the king.
every time. And of course, 3 episodes before, Tyrion literally asked him point blank, "Would you like to be the Lord of Winterfell?" And he said, "I don't want anymore." And then, no joke, I think one of the worst lines in TV history was when he asked him, "Do you want to be sit on the Iron Throne, or I guess it doesn't exist, whatever. Do you want to be the leader of the Six Kingdoms now?" And he said, "What do you think I came all this way for?" I was like, no one knows why you do anything. Like, you claim to not even have
No. Here's my ridiculous fan theory. He Kaiser Soze'd everybody. The devil was around them the entire time, and he put everything in machination. He's the one who, I mean, look, he's the one who told Sam about the truth about John, who then spread that to Danny, and who then spread that to everybody, and then that was spread around everywhere, and that's what set the entire story into motion and forced John to eventually kill Daenerys and everything. Bran Kaiser Soze. I was almost half expecting by the end of the episode for Bran to get up from his wheelchair when nobody was watching, and all of a sudden he can miraculously walk. I guarantee he can walk just based off of how he played everybody. I guarantee it. So
Yeah.
The just conspiracy theorists, like I would be open to seeing Bran in the usual suspects too.
I don't even know how far of a conspiracy it is, because he not only did he get it set in motion, he was the one who told Sansa, and he obviously knew she was going to tell Tyrion, who was going to tell Varys, and on and on and on and on. I know we're not supposed to think that he can see into the future, but I think he knows the ramifications of actions he takes, and he obviously knows people and their character very well. So no, I think he 100% did it. As for why he wanted to be king himself, I don't really know. So just to continue my gripe, because I'm just going to keep going a little bit here. So then, well, also I will say, just to give him some credit, Sansa telling Edmure Tully to just sit down was an all-time highlight. Just Uncle, just shut up. And then Robin Aaron looking like a snack. That titty milk paid off. I think some people are gonna start breastfeeding until they're 15 years old, just so they can look like Robin Aaron.
I guess so. Yeah, that veil milk gets it going.
But yeah, so then no one has a problem with it except for Yara and one other person, and they immediately relent. And then Sansa wants to go individual.
Sansa wants to go independently, and Dorne and the Iron Islands and everything. They're all okay with it. Like,
hey, and they don't want to do it themselves. Like,
it was like Benioff and Weiss. Like, okay, we know people probably thought Sansa was going to go on the Iron Throne, but she isn't. But here's how we're going to make them happy. We're just going to make her an independent ruler. So shut up, everybody. That's what almost it felt like to me.
100%. And so, yeah, Yara would have done the same thing and said, okay, the Iron Islands are also independent. Dorne, whoever the heck that kid will, I know who he is lineage-wise, but our first introduction to the new Dornish kid, he just sits there and
he doesn't have a name. He's just the Dorne Prince. Because that's all they refer to him to. He's not important enough to be referred to by name. He's just Dorne Prince that shows up on screen twice.
And then they tried to piece this storyline together with Bronn, who Tyrion basically made arguably the third most powerful person in the entire 6.5 kingdoms. I mean, he said he's the master of coin
and the Lord of Highgarden.
So Tyrion could repay a debt that he didn't even owe anymore because Cersei died. Why wouldn't Tyrion just have Bronn killed? The whole thing, and I love Bronn. He's one of my favorite characters. Him just making brothel jokes for 5 minutes was dumb. We knew that Samuel Tarly was obviously George R.R. Martin, but they then had to stick that in our face with the Song of Ice and Fire book that he brings out.
That part really made me mad because Tyrion's not a part of it. They went for a cheap joke to have Bronn and Tyrion make fun of each other, but you could make the argument that Tyrion is probably the most important character in the entire series. And I'm not just saying that because he was my favorite, but I mean, he killed the Hand of the King, which sent Cersei and everybody else into madness, and then King's Landing running around with like a chicken without its head. He had the trial by combat. His kidnapping sparked Jaime's kidnapping, which sparked the War of the Five Kings, along with his murder with the Valyrian dagger. He was the Hand of the King to the eventual Mad Queen. He became the Hand of the King to the new democratic monarchy king. He was.
No, I don't think that's your opinion at all. I think that's an absolute fact. I mean, Daenerys and Jon, he was the closest with those two people of pretty much anyone, and also was a Lannister. I mean, no, he was the central figure that tied everything together, no doubt. That joke was just a cheap, bad joke. I honestly couldn't tell if they were like still kidding or not, but then it seemed
Yeah,
like,
I was like, oh, Sam like is just trying to like give a little jab at him. Ha 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 ha. Oh wait, Tyrion is literally not in there. Like
yeah,
they were trying to like say, oh, he's like a background character, and you'll never get your credit, but know that we appreciate you. But he wasn't a background character. He was literally on the front lines the entire time. Like, what are you talking about?
that was terrible. And then you got Brienne, doctoring Jamie Lannister's Wikipedia page in the book. Um, you got it's just like, and then okay, just to finish my gripe. So then Arya, I understand they have absolutely no idea what to do with her. First of all, they don't do a single. She doesn't take anyone's face the entire season, so they waste like the coolest thing ever.
I mean, her character peaked when she killed the Night King, Brad. Like
Definitely.
that was what they were building her up for. So
Yeah, and I'm glad she didn't like go with Gendry or anything that would be belittling to the strong, independent woman that she is. But now she's Christopher Columbus out there. Um, I mean, just like they tried to make it tidy. I didn't mind John going north of the wall. I kind of like that, honestly. Just being the new leader of the wildlings and kind of reuniting with his, that was fine. But I also, at the same time, why are you following what Grey Worm tells you to do when he's gonna sail away and never return 5 minutes later? Why wouldn't John just become king as soon as Grey Worm's foot leaves dry land? Like, I don't. And so it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to complain about everything. I think that it was actually not as bad. It could have been worse.
I mean, it played out like most typical finales where they did a final character montage of how everybody was going to start living their life or whatever. They had like the climactic moment, and like, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't, it's basically how
Yeah,
you've described it.
it was just kind of, just kind of silly. Like, it wasn't even bad. It was just kind of like, they're just like, I mean, they just threw in the towel to a degree. I think that if George R.R. does finish, I guess
Good one.
yeah, I know. Well, he posted on his blog that the next book will be out within a year. Otherwise,
Okay. No,
yeah,
he said he has 3,000 words between the winds of winter and dreams of spring. And that tells me that he hasn't divided it at all, and that he has, or not 3,000 words, 3,000 pages. Sorry,
gotcha.
that tells me he hasn't done any of it. That it's still in very rough outline form.
Well,
Because
yeah,
that's how he writes. A lot of people, a lot of authors do like okay, whatever comes to mind. Like, I have an inspiration. Okay, I'm gonna go write 30 pages. I'm gonna go write 40 pages, and then it's not coming to them for a little bit, and they wait for that next breath of air. Guys like Martin outline everything. They outline everything extensively and only then write. You know what I mean?
okay.
So, like,
Well,
it's not gonna happen, Brad. It's
no, I
probably
hear
not
you.
gonna
I
happen.
hear you. Basically, I guess what I was just gonna say though was that I could see how I could be made much more satisfied with all of these story endings if they were like developed well.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
like, what happened themselves didn't piss me off. It was just the fact that we just jumped to it. Like, if Arya showed some cartography interest, in an earlier scene, then maybe it would have been okay. But yeah. So What's west of Westeros? She's gonna sail into Westworld. They're gonna have a crossover episode. But yeah, anyways, that's my full rant. It's still a great show. I still love Game of Thrones, but would have been awesome if it went out with a bang the way it started.
Well, yeah, and as much as I had my own gripes with the issue too, like I mean, what the show became in the last season was it became more of a character-driven show, which admittedly, while okay, there are great characters on it, that was never the strength. The strength of the show was, hey, the machinations of the plot, the machinations of everything moves on regardless of whoever the main character is. That's
Yep.
not very typical of any drama. That's not very typical of any program, of any play, of any book. Like, main character is established, and you develop them throughout, and you watch their journey, and then it goes to the end. Like this show, like, flipped perspectives, and this, I mean, the book series too. Like, that's what it's based on. Like, it just flips perspectives, it flips characters, it goes all the way around, and it subverts expectations the entire time. And eventually, maybe I guess at the end, you kind of have to do it. You kind of have to follow this path. It just became spectacle and set piece after set piece because you just have to wrap it up. But that wasn't why people fell in love with the show, if you know what I'm saying.
100%. No, yeah, character protection and not having character protection, in my opinion, if you had to point to one thing that made Thrones, it was that. I mean, I remember I came a little bit late. I started when season 3 was starting, so my friends were, and then I started reading the books as well. So when Eddard dies, when Robb Stark and Catelyn die, I remember my jaw hitting the floor. I'd never seen anything like it before. And so, as you said, I guess you can't just end the show. Like eventually that has to stop. And so the Starks surviving and lasting makes sense, but why have Grey Worm, Brienne, Bronn, like those people need to die? Like I don't know. I don't know.
And I think the main what I have to, okay, hold on. Where was I going to go with this? Let me gather it. Let me gather it.
Got it.
No, damn it! I lost my train of thought.
All
Okay.
right.
No. I was going to say, as much as, yeah. Okay, I got it back. I got it back. Very awkward pause there, everybody. Thanks for staying with me. As much as I had complaints about how the show ended, and as much as I saw people complaining like, "Oh, this is terrible storytelling. Oh, they're rushing it." Blah blah blah. Like, okay, those things are probably true, but I think in our consumption content culture today, I think people are entirely too caught up with the ending, and then with the endings in general. I think there's this idea that everything has to have the perfect finality of whatever you're watching, whatever you're playing, whatever you're reading. And while yes, admittedly, it is better to have like some kind of conclusive ending or some kind of like fantastical open-ended ending that maybe makes you thinking, that gets you thinking, that isn't convoluted in any fashion. The journey always matters more. The journey in anything you do, and anything you consume, and anything you watch, view, write, work on, that always matters more. You're not going to remember the end goal, because the end goal and the final goal and your expectations are always change. You're going to remember all of the time invested, all of the things you enjoyed leading up beforehand, and I want, it's not going to shift at this point because of just the hyper reactivity of social media and the internet, and then how people in general react to everything, and opinions and emotional reactions. But I really wish that would shift. Like, I don't think people, this just doesn't apply. Like I said, that doesn't necessarily just apply to Thrones. Like, I don't think people appreciate the journeys that are in life enough, because the journeys are what make things special.
I
And
totally agree.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that there is this focus and this obsession with having an awesome twist ending that, yeah, but as you said, I mean, if a movie stinks for an hour and 40 minutes, but then it has a cool ending, like that doesn't make it good. Uh,
Yeah.
and the body of work matters much more. I think as long as you avoid like a terrible ending, that's just untrue to the story or whatever, which I'm not saying Game of Thrones was, yeah, then it's fine. But I do think there is, as you mentioned, there's too much of an emphasis on that. Whether that's created from a culture of, some shows really focusing on that and delivering, like Breaking Bad, obviously many people like to point to, or whether it's just a societal, we just like things to have a great finale, a great conclusion, a sports game coming down to the wire with a buzzer beater type of thing, stuff like that, where I hear people talk about, oh, that was an all-time playoff game. Well, I know that game was terrible for 58 minutes, and then something cool happened at the end of it. So it's kind of like that to me when you say that. Like, no, I'd love to watch an awesome sports game that may not end in a crazy finish, but I'm bored for the first 2 hours, as opposed to a game that was awful, but then, yeah, there's a crazy walk-off, buzzer beater or whatever. It's like, yeah, that was sweet, but, what about the first 58 minutes?
Just appreciate the path, everybody. That's what I urge you to do. To have patience and trust the process, not to go off Philadelphia 76ers, but trust the process. And
Yep.
you'll be much happier overall. Just to wrap this up, Brad, just as our final talking point, is Game of Thrones a top 5 show all time for you?
It's still firmly in my top 5, yes.
Top 5, really? What are the other 4?
The Wire is number 1 and probably will forever be. Uh, The Americans, which I watched recently, is way, way up there. Top 3 for sure. Breaking Bad is also, so Breaking Bad and The Americans are probably fighting for 2 or 3. Um, 4, I mean, this is a tough question, of course. I mean, I don't know. I love TV. I've never been a huge movie guy compared to TV. I love series. I could throw Sopranos in there. I could throw. Oh, I don't know. That's probably the 5 right there. But the main question that you're asking, of course, is what's my favorite all time, and that is The Wire, and that will probably never change.
For me, the greatest show of all time is 6 Feet Under. I'm not sure if you ever watched it, but I think one of the great questions, and this is just my opinion, obviously, that drives everything about human life and human motivation is this constant overarching question of death hitting over us and how we deal with it and how we reflect and how it brings about reflection and uh, I don't think I've ever seen any kind of medium ever deal with death like 6 Feet Under. um, I highly urge you to watch it, Brad. I know you have an HBO subscription. It's on there. Just
Yeah,
saying.
I will.
Um, it's kind of slow at first because I mean it's about a family running a funeral home, but like each episode begins like with someone's new death. You know what I mean? Each episode begins with the death of like some random citizen in Los Angeles, and through the episode, like that person is used as like a template to teach someone like a life lesson or to like have them reflect about where they are, like one of the family members, for example. So it's
Gotcha.
really good. It's really, I mean, it's an HBO show, first of all. So I mean, there's a high quality standard there.
Yeah.
Um, Scrubs, Scrubs. I know that's a weird one for a top
No,
five.
hold on, it's not at all. So I want to have a separate categories. So no joke, if we were to say in the
No, so
non-drama, like the like serious drama show, Scrubs is my number one. No
see,
joke.
but Scrubs had a lot of good drama. I
It
would
did.
argue
But I just want
Scrubs
to
had a
put it
lot
in
of
that
good
category.
character development. Like,
If it's a half-hour show, and like if it's a half-hour like laugher, I have a separate category. But no joke, I've watched more Scrubs than any other show I've ever watched. I love Scrubs.
I
Underrated.
see. I knew this is why we were meant to be as friends. Like,
Agreed.
that makes me so happy. That makes me so
Yep.
happy. Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, obviously, I mean, that's probably going to be a stand-in for everybody. And then I haven't really thought about like the other two. I've never really watched The Wire all the way through. Yeah, sue me, whatever. I know that I have to. I probably eventually will do it, but it's obviously a hefty investment. I'm rewatching 6 Feet Under currently. Yeah, I have those three firmly entrenched. I'm gonna do the cop out and say I haven't really thought about the last two. I just know what my absolute best are. So
I think we're honestly in the age now too where of the many things Thrones changed. Now I think with how media is and how I think all the big money was previously movies is the big screen and the little screen. I think that's going away, and I think we're kind of in a golden age of television. There's so many quality shows. There's obviously more premium channels, which kind of was a theme for us. So there's a lot of, obviously the best shows tend to come from premium channels. So I think that these lists could evolve and change and grow, because there's a lot of good stuff coming out and a lot of quality television, and they're competing in these areas now, whether it be Showtime, HBO, Netflix, Stars, Amazon Prime. Like, there's a lot of good TV on the horizon.
yeah, I think what the big screen is more become has become like the outlet for like the big blockbuster, like the
Yep.
Marvel movies and the Avengers and the John Wicks, the high quality, well written dramas that are like more dialogue based, more like specific character, like a focus on specific character development. That's HBO. Like that's like you said, that's the small screen now, and I mean. Have you ever, like, for example, have you ever watched Big Little Lies?
So yes, my fiance loves it. It's a great show.
It's a good show. So if you notice, they have freaking Reese Witherspoon on there. They have Nicole Kidman. They have Shailene Woodley. They have Laura Dern. I mean, those are some A-list actresses. And did you see who they have bringing in for season
Yes,
two? Which is
Meryl Streep coming
they
in.
have the goat of
Yeah.
all actresses. Like, that tells you something about how like
Yep.
like the small screen is like the king now of this kind of programming. That's the best example.
No, 100%. 100. I mean, yes, Meryl Streep is obviously in a league of her own, but yes, no, you're seeing the biggest people. When McConaughey does a True Detective
Oh
season,
yeah, exactly.
and
But
Harrelson too. Like,
Mahershala Ali, the latest one. A guy with 2 Oscars, you know.
Yep. No, 100%. That is a clear shift and a value, recognizing value. No, 100%.
All right, my friend, I think we should wrap this one up. I appreciate you hopping on with me. I appreciate you, I guess, being a trader, a TRADER trader, and as always, bitching about TV with me. It's always a good time with you, my friend.
Yes, you too. That's what we're here for. Also, I'd be remiss if we didn't shout out Veep. Also,
oh my God, we should have said Veep. I don't know if I put that on top 5, but that finale was perfection. The finale itself has got to be one of the best finales ever.
it's so funny. So yeah, recommend that one as well. But yes, always good to talk with you. I'm sorry for being a traitor, but I'm also
TRADER.
yes, but I'm also
Right.
not sorry at all. So
you guys can follow Brad on Twitter at BradOTC. He is, as I like to call him, a future GM. He's currently up in Minnesota, and he's our salary cap guy here at TBN, salary cap and numbers in general, nerd guy. I mean, that's why he's on track to be an eventual general manager, a 6'7" general manager. That's intimidating. Again, follow him on Twitter at BradOTC. Follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski, and follow us on Twitter at the BlitzNet. And as always, everybody, stay classy.